Welcome to DigitalK.
Just a quick word of introduction. I'm a research analyst. I tend to look at digital marketing and advertising mostly from the point of view of content. And I teamed with one of my business partners, not Jeremiah, who you heard from earlier this morning, but Jessica Grootman, who's an expert in artificial intelligence, to look at how content is automating, how it's beginning to create itself, and in doing so, to solve the content problem. My most recent book was called Content, the Atomic Particle of Marketing. What we're all creating here in one way or another is content. In advertising, content is called creative. In marketing, content might be owned media, it might be social media, but all across organizations, in legal, in HR, in business intelligence, there's this ever-growing need for content. But content is really hard to do. It's onerous, it's time-consuming, it's a cost center, it's expensive, and yet, as we say in journalism, there's a constant need to feed the beast. You never don't need it, and you never don't need more of it. When I did research 5 or 6 years ago and asked marketers, and this talk is going to go well beyond marketers, but I said, what is your number one problem with content? They said, creating enough content. And this dilemma, this paradox holds true. But also creating good content. We've heard a ton this afternoon about good user experiences, personalized, targeted user experiences that are relevant to the individual needs of customers, prospects, users. And also there's this huge problem of creating what we like to call commodity content. In journalism, that might be an earnings story, or it might be sports scores, or in a product catalog, it might be writing up different descriptions of different shoes all of the time. This is very templated content, but it has to be written and it has to be differentiated. And not just written, sometimes this is images, sometimes this is video. What we're seeing now is the convergence of artificial intelligence and content. And again, this goes beyond marketing. We identified over 40 distinct applications of artificial intelligence to content. Unstructured data, image object recognition, etc. I'm about to show you a ton of examples. So we're finding that this intersection of AI with content is changing the whole game. It's about publication, it's about governance, it's about staffing, repurposing, distribution, and beyond. But let's get into what I'm talking about. A lot of you might not be familiar with automated content. This does exist in the real world. Many organizations, particularly media organizations, are already using it. So what am I talking about? Many of you might have content repositories, image banks, and things like that. If you have them, you know that content recognition is a really big problem. How do you see what's in an image, tag it, repurpose it, and make it recognizable so that it can be used across the organization? Now similar concepts can be read by machines and tagged without human intervention, so that if you want, for example, a winter scene or a breakfast scene or a coffee scene or a city scene, you can just call it up like that instantaneously. Transcriptions are really onerous and time-consuming, but there are now apps. Recordly is one of them that allows you to record audio on your telephone and instantly transcribe it into text, saving you hours and hours of manual human effort. Automated article generation is another real use case of content that the Associated Press, the American wire service, is using right now. When we have earnings season in the United States, every single publicly traded company on the stock market has to issue 4 times a year their earning reports. Journalists used to have to pore through these reports for insights, then manually write up a story saying earnings were up, earnings were down, performance was good, performance was bad. They could only, because they were human, cover a tiny, tiny fraction of the market. Now there is a 12-fold increase in articles over these formerly manual efforts, and 4,400 quarterly recaps of earning reports are being produced by the Associated Press using a software solution called Wordsmith. But this goes beyond words. There's text to video. A company named Wibbits can create a short video using publicly available footage on the internet based on its reading of a blog entry or a short article. And in less than 5 minutes, you've got your video. This is an example of a video, I'm not going to play it, that DHL created to accompany a post on their blog. This isn't just creating content, the creative process. It's also a statistical and analytical and data-driven process. Computer vision can help editors or analysts quickly classify and organize images and videos and help you to source evidence, help you to recognize patterns in data, in images, in movies, and in text. Knowledge extraction from news articles and also vast amounts of data like the Panama Papers or maybe the Mueller investigation recently in the United States. Machines can read these huge piles of information or emails that would take humans weeks, months, even years to analyze, and then very quickly pull out extracts of salient insights that actual humans can work on. Pattern recognition. We're missing, we've got the visual on this. Quartz, which is an online publisher in the United States, developed an AI system to analyze Donald Trump's tweets, looking for similarities and contradictions in his position on political and social issues. And Quartz also is using AI to do emotional analysis of the news. And in this case, they did an analysis of Donald Trump's inauguration speech, in which technology read his face and attributed various characteristics, anger, happiness, contentment, scorn, to what he was actually saying to the public on television. Natural language generation is another thing, and this is an example not for news articles but for Twitter that was written by a Los Angeles Times journalist. As many of you know, Los Angeles has earthquakes all the time. Not all of them are the big earthquake, but many of them, if not most of them, are worthy of news coverage. So the LA Times developed QuakeBot. It draws data from the National Geological Survey, and every single time there's an earthquake in Los Angeles, it automatically sends out a tweet based on this template. Really, really simple in design, but very, very useful to the people who live in the area or to geologists following the phenomenons. Now, I gave you a lot of examples from journalism, but this table from our most recent report, which I appreciate can be a little more difficult to read if you're back in the room, but it's available on the Kaleido Insights website, shows the 40 use cases that we've identified for creating automated content, not just across advertising and media, as many of these results were, but legal and HR, sales, even product itself is creating content automatically. And what I'd like to do is share some examples of what companies are doing right now in the real world across different sectors of business with automated content. Kara AI was developed by a company called Casetext, and it is being used by law firms to get into cases and make analysis and recommendations of legal cases, of contracts, and even of course cases. So the tool can surface legal precedents. It can surface former opinions by the judge that you know that you're going to come up against. It can predict the arguments that opposing counsel is going to make and give you ammunition to counter those arguments. And all of these queries can be refined with various keywords. This can help lawyers and their staffs work better and more efficiently, and obviously more cheaply, because some of the human and very manual research that was required in legal channels is not required anymore. HR, job recruitment optimization. I think this is one's pretty interesting. There's a company called Textio that analyzes job ads. It scans over 300 million job ads and analyzes which ads are the most effective based on keywords, based on syntax, and based on how quickly those jobs were filled. It gives each job ad a score as to how quickly it will find a candidate based on how well it's written. So NVIDIA, a tech company in Silicon Valley, is challenged both in terms of diversity, racial diversity, and in hiring women. You might know that this is a big problem to fill roles and to be culturally diverse in traditionally male-dominated fields. So NVIDIA gave ads to Textio to optimize to attract more women and to attract more minorities into the company. And they basically are filling jobs 50% faster than they were in the past, and they've seen a 28% increase in female applicants to their jobs. This is an example from marketing, and it's an example of really scaling up content production and doing so on a hyper-local level. Vivint is a home security company, and they create technology, garage door openers and things like that, and they market on a very, very local level. So in the United States, this is not just down to an individual state, but individual cities and individual municipalities, and they're challenged to create hundreds and hundreds of websites in order to, let's see, it's 30,000, not even hundreds, but thousands of websites, in order to create hyper-local material about how to keep your community safe, what local crime rates are, and basically what the needs of homes are in different localities. So they were doing this first with human efforts, and they were only coming up with about 25 pages of content a week. This is not going to work very well at scale when you're trying to create 30,000 websites, and moreover, it's simply too expensive. So they used Vivint to automatically generate the content for the websites. They've seen a 5-fold increase in sales because this hyper-local content is much more relevant to local consumers. They've saved a ton of money because they're not paying creatives and content providers to create this highly specific content. And they can scrape marketing and other data that's incredibly, incredibly relevant. Additionally, their search rankings have spiked up through the roof because they have so much more local content, and that content is so much more relevant than it was in the past. Media natural language generation. This is another example of the earnings stories. Frees journalists up to do more with their time, more challenging stories, more interesting stories. So this can really help a workforce. And it's at the same time creating a 10-fold increase in content production. I didn't put this case study in there, but this is also being used in customer service. There are chatbots that are AI-driven, but also hand the content over to human beings when AI is too challenged to answer a question. This means that the human customer service agents get to have more interesting conversations because the super repetitive commodity questions are answered by the bot. So as with the journalists, artificial intelligence can automate these repetitive sort of bread and butter tasks and leave more interesting projects to be dealt with by humans. Now, we've talked about a lot of examples that are going on in the real world, and this is brave new world stuff, as Jeremiah said earlier. Humans are merging with computers and vice versa. But there are a lot of risks involved with this. You can't just invest in a tool, set it, and forget it. The content that is going to be generated by AI is only going to be as good as the algorithms and as good as the data. And algorithms and data can be biased and have to be continually fine-tuned. One example is a merchant was using AI to create newsletter copy. And they asked the bot to put in the best-selling product on the website because they wanted to sell more of whatever that product it was. The best-selling product on the website happened to be a Christmas item, and that went out in the Easter newsletter. So you have to continually check against reality and against human needs and not just rely on the content. There's a skill set gap. You're going to need people who are going to be able to run these systems and understand these systems. And these are probably not the same people you have on your staff right now as content creators, videographers, etc. There's always the risk of creepiness when content is a little too personal or a little too close. But of course, there are many rewards as well. There's speed, there's automation, there's cost savings, there's even making people more satisfied with their jobs when they're freed of doing repetitive tasks and instead challenged to think ahead and to be more creative. So with this, I challenge you to think about what you can do with content, what you can do with automation to improve not just your marketing, not just your journalism efforts, but really across the scope of your organization.